Welcome back to Sonic Satellite. We're here in Spring Yard Zone, a stage that needs no introduction. Just listen to that music. Look at these visuals. Oh man, this is definitely almost my favorite zone in the game. There is only one zone that I like more than Spring Yard Zone, and that's Starlight Zone, but we'll get to that one a little bit later. Last time we went ahead through Green Hill and Marble Zone, taking down Dr. Eggman in both of those locations and securing 3 out of the 6 legendary Chaos Emeralds. And we're back. I love the background of this stage. I love the visual design of this stage. This stage just feels like, I don't know, it feels like a party. Yeah. I think this stage was originally supposed to be sort of like casino-esque. I mean, the music definitely does evoke those images of a casino, even though there's not necessarily a whole lot of casino-like stuff going on here. Definitely not like Casino Night Zone, which we'll see in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. But this stage is so beautiful. Have I said that already? Have I said yet that this stage is beautiful? Look at me with 107 rings. Getting to the special stage right there. There goes Act 1, all done and dusted. We can go into the special stage and try for our 4th Chaos Emerald. Oh boy. Yeah, this game, man, the visuals, just the visuals of each and every single stage it's so striking, so beautiful. And I actually realized I neglected to even explain what we're doing or why we're doing any of this stuff. Yeah, South Island sure is beautiful, huh? That's where this game takes place, actually, on South Island, and Dr. Robotnik has come to the island to pretty much, I guess, take over, collect the Chaos Emeralds, harness their power to take over the island and defeat his arch nemesis Sonic the Hedgehog. Now you could see how a story like that could slip my mind because it's very, very basic. It's about as basic as the plot in Super Mario Brothers, where it's just, hey, Bowser kidnapped the princess, go rescue her, But anyway, Sonic won't meet Mario for another several years. You don't have to worry about that just yet. No. Not until the Olympic Games. There goes another Chaos Emerald, and yeah, these stages are easy. They don't get much harder than this here. And one thing that you might notice when we get back into the levels is the backgrounds of these stages are just so beautiful. I mean, look at the way that they scroll and the clouds and everything, and I was playing around on my Sega Genesis, because sometimes I do that, and I realized, I was like, hey, the backgrounds aren't scrolling, and they don't have the same level of depth as in this version of the game. And then I looked at some other versions of the game, and it differs. Some versions of this game, some ported versions, have backgrounds that have the depth, like you can see the clouds are clearly scrolling on a series of layers, and other versions of this game don't have that same level of depth. So my assumption is that probably somewhere along the lines, Sonic Team updated and enhanced the backgrounds, and I'm not sure exactly when that started. It might have been in Sonic Jam, might have been on Mega Collection or something like that on the GameCube or PS2. I'm not sure when they started updating those kinds of things, but somewhere along the lines they decided to update the backgrounds. And I mean, hey, the game looks way better for it, right? With this part right here, and yeah, I got hit and lost my rings, so no special stage for me. I was going to actually comment about the background of these sort of indoor portions. Those little circles, they look like they could be convex or they could be concave. I can never really tell. I also, speaking of the backgrounds there, I love these these gates here and how you can kind of see through them. It's just, I don't know. Now see these right here. Like, are these concave or convex? These circles, like, do they dip in or do they bulge out? I can't really tell. I never really thought about it until I was looking at this stage again, and I was like, huh, whatever. Anyway, this stage, when I was younger, I used to always accidentally call it Spring Garden Zone because it kind of looks like a garden. So I always really thought of it as like kind of a botanical, sort of a botanical garden or something like that, like a futuristic botanical garden. That's always the imagery that comes to mind whenever I think of the stage. And, you know, just when I think of the stage's theming and everything, I always think that it's trying to go for a botanical garden, which it probably isn't. That's probably just me misunderstanding. But it looks great nonetheless. And it's a super fast and fun stage too. If I could get down here, you could see that you can really go on these slopes and gain so much speed and go so fast, almost as fast as Green Hill, except for the fact that there's a lot more obstacles in your way this time around, and a lot more sections like this where you kind of have to take it a little bit slower so that you don't get hit. Take out these crab meats here. 2 pigs and a chicken. 2 pigs and a chicken and crab robots, yeah. I always wondered about these lights in the sky. Why are they just kind of suspended there in midair? They're not connected to anything. They're just kind of floating there. And I make this part right here look easy. The way I so masterfully jump across those thin little platforms. But I assure you that's actually pretty difficult to do there. It's not as easy as I make it look. Look at the speed though. It's so great. Of course we didn't get an extra life right there. We just got ourselves another set of coins, or another coin or whatever. Up to 787 now. Maybe I'll, you know, take them to the store. Maybe they convert into cryptocurrency. Anyway, here we have the third boss of the game, the Egg Stinger. This boss is actually quite difficult, or at least it was for me. But I found a neat trick is just to kind of let him, you know, sort of try and drop down onto you. Don't try and hit him when he's on his way down. That's the mistake I used to make, and then I would end up hitting him in the bottom of his cockpit there and hitting the spike and then taking damage and falling to my death, which is not great. Just play it safe and you'll be a-okay. And you can see on the side of the screen there's these sort of gates that appear that stop your progress, and those are exclusive to the 16:9 versions of Sonic 1. I believe the Android phone version of this game, which also runs in 16:9, uses those gates as well, but you won't see them in the original 4:3 aspect ratio version of the game because, well, you can't see enough of the screen for it to matter, so, you know. In those versions, Eggman's, this fight takes up the entire screen because you're only able to see so much. But here we are in Labyrinth Zone, and this is going to be one doozy of a zone because while I don't find Labyrinth Zone to be particularly difficult, it is really long. It's the longest stage in the game. Well, the longest zone in the game, I should say. And that's due entirely to the fact that you're underwater for the entire time. You're just underwater, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're stuck underwater for most of the zone. This isn't like later Sonic the Hedgehog games where if you play your cards right, you can get by without actually even touching the water. You know, in Aquatic Ruins, I think was the name of the zone from, I believe, Sonic 2. In that one, you can take a route to avoid the water, but in this one, you can't avoid it. You're stuck under here and you just have to deal with it. And yeah, Sonic can't swim. One of the many interesting things about this character. He never learned how to swim. He just can't do it. So that's why, unlike other 90s platforming mascots like Donkey Kong, who can swim quite well, Sonic has to just try and run his way through the underwater sections oh so slowly. And oh, you just saw right there the danger music, as I like to call it. Yes, if you stay underwater for too long, then Sonic will, of course, run out of oxygen and start to drown, which is also a bit different from other 90s gaming mascots. Like in Donkey Kong, you can stay underwater for as long as you want. You will not drown. You'll be perfectly fine. I think there's some stages in Donkey Kong Country games where the water's like toxic, so you can't stay underwater for too long. But yeah, in those games you can stay underwater for as long as you want. I never really thought about that. Sonic is the only game that really, where it kind of makes sense that, yeah, this character sort of needs to breathe. And you can either regain your breath by obviously breaching the water and returning to the surface, or you can collect one of the bubbles that are located underwater. And those bubbles do like to troll you. Sometimes you'll be standing next to a bubble dispenser and no bubbles will come out. Yeah, you'll get no bubbles. And I've died several times by just getting hit or just standing next to the bubbles and there's no bubbles coming out. Or what's even worse is when a bubble does come out and you miss it. That's the worst part of all. And look at these little corks. These little corks here. A friend of mine calls them sponges. Do you think they're sponges or do you think they're corks? I think they're corks because corks float in water. Sponges also float in water, but I always thought corks because, put a cork in water, it floats. And, when the water rises, those things float. I mean, they could be sponges, I guess. Man, I'm sitting here at 47 rings, and I really want to get this special stage. So I jump over here to see if there's any rings, and I get hit by one of these driller dudes whose names I don't remember. Oh, well. I believe they're burrow bots, actually. Act 1 is finished, and yeah, 3.5 minutes for Act 1. Good lord, we've had entire zones finished in under 3.5 minutes. Yeah, it's pretty long. It's pretty long, and here goes the second part. And I love this little slide. I love the animation that Sonic has. I can't get on this spring right here. I love his little... He's like, whoa. Oh, God, I'm such a nerd. But yeah, more underwater. It's a drag. I mean, there's nothing really I could say. It's just not super fun. It's an underwater thing. I do like that that warbling effect that they give to the background here, where you can kind of see the background is sort of slightly distorted by the water. There's the very, very far background, which is always constantly sort of, warping, and then there's the background that's closer to the foreground here. Or I suppose you could call it the foreground, where it's that sort of thin line of warbling. Very, very nice effect. I like it quite a lot. So these item boxes that we break open, I always just call them item boxes, but some people call them TVs. And I always just thought to myself, why would they be a television? Like, I just figured it was a box with a screen on it, that shows you what's inside of it. For whatever reason, they had to put a screen on it. They couldn't put a sticker. They had to be fancy. But I just always figured it was like a, a little box with like a screen on it. And I never thought of it as a TV. But some people I've heard call those things TVs. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I was invincible just now, but I'm still drowning. That's because despite the fact that you're invincible, you will still drown. Your life is not safe underwater, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you have invincibility or a bubble shield. Well, I guess this isn't really the bubble shield as it exists in Sonic 3, but it doesn't really matter what you have on you. You're still gonna drown. And oh, thank God, Labyrinth Zone is almost over. Because we just got through Act 2, and that one only took us 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Not as bad as Act 1, but then again, I did take some time in Act 1 to try and get some rings so I could go back to the special stage. Because we are cutting things pretty close here with the special stages. We are on Chaos Emerald number 5, and I believe there's only 2 more zones where we'd be eligible to earn a Chaos Emerald. Because after this one, of course, there's a boss fight, and then there's a Starlight Zone, and then there's the final zone. And if I'm remembering correctly, you can't actually earn Chaos Emeralds in the final zone. You can only earn them in the main zones. Yeah, these just, and I don't know, maybe it's just that I know which way to go, because this one is kind of a maze. This special stage is kind of a maze where you can make a wrong turn and potentially fall into the goal, but man, I just find these to be so easy. I mean, it's kind of it's a bit wonky to get yourself, situated and get yourself lodged into the right space here. But, I never really feel like I'm in danger of failing these Sonic 1 special stages. I should probably stop disrespecting them before something terrible happens to me. But what can I say? I'm just that good. At these special stages in particular, but, There we go. Chaos Emerald number 5. There's only one more Chaos Emerald left in the game. I always think of these Chaos Emeralds as being viewed from above, because in later games, the Chaos Emeralds are more diamond cut. And I'm sure there's like a whole bunch of the sort of semantics of how you would describe the Chaos Emeralds, because I've heard that, they're not really emeralds, and it's like, yeah, well, I mean, an emerald is a type of stone, so they're not technically emeralds, but they're just called Chaos Emeralds. So they're not really emeralds because of their various colors, and also the cut of them, I think, makes them not emeralds too. I have no idea. They're magical rocks that we've just recently learned are from space, so, I don't know. Boy, oh boy. This is actually the hardest, one of the hardest zones in the game. This one has a lot of really, really tricky platforming parts. I can imagine that as a kid, a lot of people have trouble with this stage because it's so tricky. There's a lot of intricate platforming. And this part right here is really, really hard on the Genesis version of the game. I make it look like child's play because I have the spin dash, but if you don't have the spin dash, you have to try and jump over those spikes in the middle, or just get enough momentum so you can run over them. But if they appear underneath you, you instantly die because you're going to get crushed up against the ceiling, and crushing is instant death in this game, as I'm sure I've said before. Sonic's little waiting animation there. Hold your horses, Sonic, alright? It's a little conveyor belt. Don't get too hasty. He's so impatient, he gets it from his father. We never really see Sonic's parents at all. We see Sonic's mother in Sonic Underground, if you remember that TV show. When I was a kid, I thought that was the weirdest show ever, because growing up, I watched Sonic X, and I also watched the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. And, I loved Sonic X as a kid. I liked the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog just fine. That show's that's an older one. That one's from the 90s. Sonic X is an anime from the early 2000s. But the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is kind of cool. It's a bit interesting how the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog came to be, because I believe ABC Television was in charge of producing the Sonic Sat AM TV show with Sally Acorn and Bunny Rabbit and all the characters from the Archie comics. And there was another studio that also made the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Like they were both made at the same time, and they both aired at the same time, apparently. But I don't know, like ABC decided, I think, to go with Sonic Sat AM instead, and they had the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog run on another channel in syndication or something like that. And real quick, that part right there with the corks, you can get stuck down there at the Genesis version. If you miss those corks in the Genesis version, you're screwed, and you're not going to be able to get back up. You're just going to be completely stuck down there, and you're going to drown, and you're going to have to start over, and just remember to jump on those corks. So right here, we have the Eggmobile. which is just the name of Eggman's cockpit. That's the boss. You just have to chase after him up this tunnel. My best advice is to try and go a little bit fast, because once you get stuck under the water, it's very, very likely that you're going to drown and die. I managed to make that look extremely easy, which even for me, that's still hard, even though I've played this game a million times. But that's going to do it for this episode of Sonic Origins and this episode of Sonic Satellite. Thank you all for joining me. Next time, we're going to Starlight Zone, and then we're going to take the fight directly to Eggman. You don't want to miss it. Until then.